Hello everybody, Shrouded Hand here. Recently I've been weirdly obsessed with the idea of talking animals. After I did that video about Jeff the Talking Mongoose, I got this book and read it cover to cover. It's a really good book. I might actually do a review of it at one point. But after reading it, I went in search of other talking animals. History has quite a few notable examples, such as Whitey the cat, Batty the elephant, and Hoover the seal, which is the only one I can actually find any footage of. While I was researching talking animals, I came across Victor the Budgie, and that just set me down a long rabbit hole of weirdness. In 1997, a man named Ryan Reynolds, not the actor, bought a budgerigar at a pet store in Ontario, took it home and named him Victor. It turned out Victor's capacity for learning words was amazing. Within 6 months, Victor had learned a wide vocabulary of words and was able to vocalize them clearly. And I know a lot of birds can be taught to speak. It's a phenomenon that's well documented, so a talking bird wouldn't exactly be newsworthy. The difference here is that Victor seemed to be able to talk in context. He wasn't simply repeating words with no apparent understanding of their meaning. He was forming complex sentences from those words, seeming to show an understanding of context and language structure. Ryan began making recordings of Victor's speech and attempted to spread the message of his amazing talking animal. He created a website to share Victor's words and founded the Budgie Research Group, an online forum where people could get together to discuss Budgie speech. Unfortunately, Victor died in 2001, but Ryan was left with hundreds of recordings of his voice. His original website doesn't seem to be going anymore, but the Wayback Machine has a lot of it archived and we're still able to browse most of it, and it offers a decent insight into the kind of theories that the Budgie Research Group were developing. PTD, Parakeet Time Differential. A parakeet's metabolism is much faster than ours. Because of this, their thinking process is faster as well. Science confirms our brainwaves travel at the speed of light. In comparison to a budgie, our thought patterns would have to travel many more times the distance because of its larger size. Therefore, a parakeet may think several thoughts during the time we have one. When they talk, it seems as if it is unintelligent babbling, when in actuality, their thinking process is too fast for us to understand. Additionally, their shorter lifespans, 10 to 15 years, contributes to an accelerated experience of life. For example, 1 hour of our time is equal to 10 hours of parakeet time. During that time, they will experience 10 hours of thoughts, emotions, and experiences as well. This theory, along with ideas like parakeet autism syndrome, parakeet artistic talent syndrome, and the idea that birds could communicate telepathically, showed that the Budgie Research Group was really thinking outside the box as far as bird communication was involved. The website attracted a fairly large group of people, eager to share recordings of their own birds' intelligent speech and tell stories of their exploits. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of spiritual discussion in the early posts of the Budgie Research Group. There was a small section on the website, rather ominously titled The Heaven's Gate Recordings, in which Victor predicted his own death and talks about the afterlife. Ryan writes about this. During the last few months of his life, he developed a strong belief in God and religion. He made many recordings during this time where he spoke about the afterlife and even imagined talking with God. Other than explaining the concept of God to him and reading a few passages of the New Testament to him only once, he developed his own understanding of religion. Many people believe Victor's recordings were divinely inspired. To me, they showed a strong belief in spiritualism and a possible link that we may have more in common to animals than anyone ever thought possible. So although the idea of a budgie communicating a divine message was around from the start, it wasn't the main focus of the group to begin with. But over time it seems that the idea that the budgies were communicating a message from heaven became more and more prominent in Ryan's beliefs. Sadly, a lot of the original recordings from the budgie research group are not online anymore, but Ryan kept all the recordings and he's been uploading them to YouTube ever since. Over the years he acquired 2 more budgies that displayed the same ability to communicate intelligently. He named these budgies Danny and Mela, and apparently he still has hundreds of hours of budgie speech still to translate and interpret. Looking at his current output, it's clear that the spiritual aspect is the main focus of Ryan's work today. The budgies' words are full of visionary messages, prophecies for the future and divine truths. His scientific theories have evolved to incorporate a lot about quantum mechanics. The videos contain what he calls quantum reversals, the idea that the birds can communicate both forwards and backwards in time, and so by playing the recordings in reverse, extra messages can be heard. He also has a new website and forum where he explains a lot of his ideas more fully. The laws of quantum mechanics conclude that when we look further down into the smaller realm of atoms and subatomic particles, the laws are much different than they are in normal physical reality. So if we look at a budgie weighing 40 grams, it is about 2,000 times smaller than a 180-pound human. As a result, they are much closer to functioning according to the laws of quantum mechanics than a human would be. I propose that they also understand these laws accordingly. It is a widely accepted fact that birds have a sixth sense and have basic survival skills that come to them naturally from their understanding of Mother Nature. Some scientists are beginning to believe that quantum mechanics is the force that drives Mother Nature. These bizarre ideas of quantum theory as they relate to bird anatomy, along with what looks like the formation of a new kind of spirituality based on their words, means there's way too much budgie deep lore for me to unpack here. I actually contacted Ryan Reynolds himself and he agreed to do an interview with me to talk a bit more about what he was doing. I've really got to apologise in advance for the poor quality of my voice in this recording. When I recorded this I had a terrible fever, so you can kind of tell I'm having trouble forming coherent sentences. You might notice I haven't uploaded much in the last couple of weeks because I've been very ill. I was probably at my worst when I recorded this, so I sound like a babbling idiot. At the same time, I also didn't set up my microphone correctly, so it's also cutting in and out. So I apologise for both those aspects, making it almost unlistenable when I'm speaking, but luckily it's mostly Ryan talking and his part is completely clear. I'll put subtitles over the bits where I'm talking because it's hard to make out what I'm actually asking. Just bear with it because what Ryan has to say is very interesting. Okay, so yeah, I just wanted to talk to you about your budgies.
Oh yeah.
Just ask you some questions about it because I found your channel randomly. I was just looking through I was looking for information about talking animals because I'm reading a book about I don't know if you've heard of Jeff the Talking Mongoose.
I've heard a little bit about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just looking through for information about talking animals, and I came across
Oh,
your channel, and I found it quite interesting. So I thought I would maybe make a video about it and ask you some questions. So if you don't mind, was Victor? Was that your first talking budgie?
yeah. Victor, I got him in. I think it was 2000, and he was the first one that I started a website for him,
Yeah.
and basically at that time there was no. You wouldn't even hardly see any. This was back in I think 1999 or 2000. Everything was up new with webs and having website for budgies and things like that. And when I started it, it was pretty popular. Yeah.
Yeah. I was watching some of your videos about him, and so you taught him to say like a few things, but then he started saying things that you hadn't taught him.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when it actually blew up was when I started recording him, and he would listen to what I was recording, and he'd sit on my shoulder by the computer.
Yeah.
And within about 3 months, he just started talking a full blown speech.
That's interesting. Or how long before you realized he was saying things that were like prophetic and?
It was probably. It wasn't until after probably about until he was a year old, because he did do a lot of mimicries in the beginning.
Yeah. And what was it? Because you were like listening to it and trying to decipher what he was saying, and
yeah,
you found that he was saying things that were coming true, or
yeah. He actually at one point talked about the tsunami in Asia, and a lot of his recordings, like he only when he started talking, it was only like 6 months before he passed after this. So I had a lot of recordings that I transcribed after he died. But he predicted a lot of things, and in his videos he talks about everything that I've basically been through almost in the last 20 years. So he had insight. I don't know how. It was like he could see the videos in another plane of existence.
All right. Wow. And then later on, you got more budgies, or did you have them around the same time? Because I know some of your videos are going back like 10 years or so almost.
Yeah. Victor was the first, and that was 20. And then about 10 years later, I got Mailer. And Mailer actually came from a neighbor when I was working as a superintendent on a site. And I went into her house, and I noticed she had a budgie that had mites really bad. And I told her that, she should take it to the vet because, it was very unhealthy. So she took it to the vet, and she said it really, said the odd word. But then a couple of months later, she asked me if I wanted it because she wasn't prepared to have it, because it flew into her garden one day, actually, when she was out in the garden, and she just kind of adopted it. But she had another bird that she couldn't. She didn't really want to keep it. So I took Mailer, and within a day, he just listened to Victor, and he just started talking in similar way as Victor. And both him, Mailer, and Danny have basically an unlimited vocabulary.
Right. Is Mailer still with you there, or?
No, Mailer was. They normally only live usually for about maybe 6 to 10 years, and Mailer was already probably about 6 or 8 when I got him. So he died a couple of years after that. Okay. And even my last budgie, Danny, which I had in 2017, he started talking within a few months. He only lived for a little over a year, because when we got him, he was sick. That was one of the reasons why I got him, because I wanted to see if I could bring him back to health. But he was with us for about a year, and he started just, talking right from almost the get-go.
All right. So have you got other birds now? Or?
I've got, right now I've got a Simon, which he was another budgie that I kind of rescued from the pet store because he was sick, and he's not a talker as much. He'll say the odd word, but not anything like Mailer or Victor or Danny.
Oh, okay.
And I've also got a female red-winged blackbird too that my daughter rescued that kind of tries to chirp out the odd word here and there too as well, which is kind of interesting.
Oh, wow. I like blackbirds, wild ones in Britain. I watch them a lot in my garden because they make
Yeah,
nests. They make nests sometimes in the bush in the back garden. Does
yeah,
it?
it's fun. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was just going to say, is it only budgies that you think can have this ability to talk? And well, I know birds can mimic, but this ability to sort of send messages.
Yeah, a lot of the larger birds they can talk well, but I've never really seen another bird like even African greys, which was Irene Peppenberg's bird that was supposed to be one of the smartest birds in the world, couldn't come close to the ability that the budgies can. And budgies are known to have large vocabularies.
Yeah.
And they do have some of the largest vocabularies in the world. So I think it has something to do with how they connect to people, and if they connect spiritually to somebody, then they can get this connection to God as well.
So do you think the speech, is that some kind of are they channeling something else, or is it something to do with their own intelligence, or is the messages coming from somewhere else, or is it their own brains doing it?
All three of the budgies and that I've had say they have a connection to heaven, and it's on a different kind of spiritual level than what we're at. They can, if you think about it, it's like the sound waves we can only pick up I don't less than 5% of the actual sound waves out there, and they can, and animals are known to be able to pick up higher or more information. And it's the same as light. We can only see less than 1% of the light or the things that are actually there. And I think it's 0.035%. So there's so much there that we can't see the vibrations of things that are there. And you know this for yourself with the videos I've seen that somehow these things can kind of go back and forth from one dimension to another.
Yeah.
Sounds are there. It's a connection that you have to make. It's kind of like a channel, a frequency, and the budgies somehow can tune into that, and they can tune into another plane, and they call heaven, and they call them angels, and the whole works, and they say God is even communicating with them as well. And that's pretty evident in all the recordings, which is in the beginning I thought it was kind of crazy to think like that, because I didn't believe in anything like that, but I've been just hearing it so much over the last 20 years of similar things that we can't really deny it's happening.
So when you say you didn't believe in anything like that, do you mean you weren't religious, or you didn't believe in the animals being able to communicate?
Well, I didn't believe that animals could communicate for sure the way they do, and even though I did believe in God, but I wasn't a devout Christian or anything like that, because I didn't believe that I believed a lot of the Bible was not right. I didn't, a lot of it was for the time that, the culture and the politics of the time, and the texts were put in that were chosen by, certain individuals. And there's so much that was left out, and and that's what the budgies are saying, and through their connection, that they can actually pick up some of this information that we've lost over the years.
It's interesting what you were saying before about how we can't see certain light frequencies. I just wanted to go back to that briefly, because I watched a documentary about how birds can see light frequencies that humans can't see. So when you see birds that look like kind of quite their feathers don't look very colourful to other birds, they kind of glow, and they can see like ultraviolet frequencies and things.
Oh, I'd like to see that. Yeah.
I can't remember where I saw it. I think it was on like some David Attenborough documentary or something. But this made me think it then. I've seen on your videos you say that like a group of people have sort of formed around the prophecies of the budgies, like Victor's words and things like that. Is that like a a physical group that gets together? Do you?
Well, at one point I had, when I first started off, I had one of the largest, we called it the Budgie research groups in on you, not Google, Yahoo groups.
Oh, Yahoo groups, yeah.
1,000 members. I've had websites that have had up to 4,000 or 5,000 members, and then because of things that happen over the years, you get issues going on within a group. I'm just kind of restarting and getting that. I want to start getting that group going again.
Right.
And there's a couple of videos on some of the things that happen. Like people they don't agree on, especially when I started going the spiritual way, when everybody was really interested in the animal intelligence side, and there was no doubt that these budgies were communicating. But when I started hearing all these spiritual things, then a lot of the people left, and it caused some problems. So
yeah,
I don't think people were just willing to accept it at that point. So I just kind of separated myself from that for a while, and I got into learning more of what was the teachings that I was getting from the budgies as they were passing them on to me.
All right. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if you get a group going again, because I mean, I've only had a little time to go through all the videos. There's a lot of information, but there was something about people having dreams that were the budgies were then talking about, and
and that was very interesting. We had 12 members that, they would send in their dream to me, and then I would do a translation of the dream through using the budgies as the medium to get that information. And normally what would happen at the end, there would be a prophecy, and they would tell us within a couple of days something would happen in the news, and then something would come out in the news a little bit later within the time frame that they specified. And it was just so, a lot of people might think it's coincidence, but there were so many consistent things happening that we realized that it's got to be, this connection has got to be coming from a heavenly source, be able to do that. The other thing too that we found out was that the people that were dreaming were having similar dreams at the same time, and there was one person that actually had a dream about some earthquakes. They happened within a few days, and some major earthquakes. The tsunami that was in Indonesia was something. The volcano was something else that we talk consistently about, and were more or less warned about.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I was part of an online group years and years ago where we were like attempting to see if we could have a collective dream, and there was all these we were trying for months to we'd go to sleep and try and picture the same thing, and I don't think anything really very conclusive came of it, but it was an interesting experiment.
I think maybe one of the reasons why it didn't work, because when you open your mind up and you can and really listen to the recordings that you're hearing, you're tapping into something, to a frequency that allows you to accept the dreams that God can send you. And a lot of the dreams that you might get on at night, and it might be scary, it might be a scary dream, and it might kind of say, oh, well, God wouldn't send, or the angels wouldn't send a dream like that. But in most cases, it's just a warning to prevent something bad from happening to you. More or less saying, if you continue on that path, then this could happen to you. And then when you wake up and you think, oh, thank God, that didn't happen, then you experience that feeling, intense emotions of it happening. You're so happy, and say, oh, geez, I don't even want to go there, or what can I do to prevent that from happening, kind of thing.
Yeah. I think I've definitely had dreams like that where I've done something terrible, and it's like, not that I do it in real life, but it's given me that feeling of the consequences of those actions, and quantum mechanics, quantum recording, quantum reversing. That was something else in your videos that I've seen. It's very interesting. Your idea of bringing quantum physics into the idea of the talking budgies. I wonder if
Yeah.
you could talk about that.
Yeah, that's, well, if you think about a budgie, the size of a budgie, it's about 1,000 times less than what a human is in weight and mass and that. And so that means that they're that much closer to the quantum level than what humans are. And if you take a microscope and you look at a cell, you magnify it 1,000 times, you can see all kinds of things that are in that cell. And that's kind of the way I give that, the relationship, why the budgies are able to be that much closer. But there's so many other things when it comes to the quantum. The quantum reversals are connected more or less to our soul, like the soul and dreams and visions are all in the metaphysical. And there's a long list of things that really relate to it. Like for one thing, the act of observation. Like you could have a bird, like a budgie, talking away and not understand anything that they're saying, but unless you put your headphones on and listen and spend, like I have to spend 2 or 3 hours in some of these recordings going over and over it, and I'm basically looking at that and observing that, and then that's helping to create, or not really create it. It's not something I create, but make something happen that is part of that quantum level thing.
So do you think there's something going on between your consciousness interpreting the words and what the birds are saying? For example, I'm reading this book about Jeff the Talking Mongoose, and one of the theories is that it's somehow related to the minds of the family who experienced it. It has a lot of the personality traits of the family members, the 3 family members who lived together, and somehow they were their thoughts were somehow being projected onto the intelligence of another animal, and that was kind of like part of what was bringing out the messages.
I suppose it's possible, but when I started out about 2005. And I had a lot of people sending me in recordings of their budgies. They would hear Victor and all of a sudden I've got over 30 individual budgies that talk similar to Victor backed up on file. And when they sent in the recordings, the guardians of the budgies were just amazed at what they were saying. They didn't have a clue and then I would do a translation back to them, and they would say, "Oh," and they just, like they kind of go, "Wow, I can't believe this is happening," and they're saying that. So a lot there's a connective consciousness there that they can tap into as a species, and that also comes with the angels and everything, and ancestors and the genomes that we all, including animals, have in their spiritual. I call it their spiritual level. It's part of spiritual evolution that we can still relate back to things that happened in the past through our DNA.
Okay, and so people were playing recordings of Victor to their budgies, and then their budgies started talking.
Yeah, and then they send me the recordings. I've got some pretty incredible recordings of others, but I haven't really, because I've had so much of my own to do, that I haven't really done anything as much. I did it early in the beginning. I translated them for them, but I've more or less put them aside for the last 15 years or so.
Oh, it'd be interesting for people to do that now, to like record them, their budgies, listening to the recordings, and see what happens.
Yeah, that's what I would like to do. I'd like to start that whole process over and get that, and maybe that's something that could result from you, because I know you've got a large following there, and if we can get some people interested, there could be some pretty incredible things that's happening. All of it. I know it's kind of a little bit different thing for you to do, but there's always like the yin and the yang to things,
Yeah. Well, I think like what I was planning to do in my video is just sort of present some of your recordings just objectively just put them out there and leave people to listen to them and make up their own minds about it. I think I can imagine you'll get quite a varied reaction. You'll get some like quite skeptical people, some people who believe it. There's because any time I put a video, I get completely varied reaction to these things. So
and that was one of my problems, like 20 years ago. Like I didn't know what I know now when it comes to people saying negative things, and it was hard for me to listen to when I put something out, that I thought was spiritual and loving and caring and that, and then somebody say something nasty about it. It upset me. So I've had to learn a lot about that over the years as well.
Yeah. That's just the thing about being online, isn't it? You get there's always a negative person.
I had I went to one of the forums. I think it was like one of those unexplained forums where they have a lot of traffic. And when Mailer first came, and I'd record Mailer, and then I do the transcription, and then I'd go to the website, and somebody would post after I did the transcription, and Mailer was answering the question before they actually posted it, and he was doing it consistently. And then so the thread got really busy, like thousands and thousands of hits, and then people were coming to my website, and then I had like about maybe 10 people come on, and they just destroyed me because it was something that they didn't want people to know or whatever it was. But eventually and all the other people that were seeing it happen just kind of sat back, and I couldn't really believe it. So that was about must have been about 10 years ago.
Yeah, did that put you off, like
putting
the information out there?
Yeah.
Oh, is there any predictions for the future that you've got? I noticed one extreme weather in 2022. That
Victor said that, and that was in 2000. He said the weather events are going to increase rapidly, and that what we're hearing right now is that there are going to be some, and it's obvious because of what's happening in the world today with all the floods and the weather events, and things are going, and they are a lot harder. Humanity is experiencing a lot of hardships, probably more now than they ever had, and it's just going to get worse. And so that's the whole idea of what the angels and the Budgies connected through them is. They're going to try and help us prevent some of these things, especially when it comes to pain and suffering. Like if they know that an earthquake's going to happen, and we've got enough people, Budgies and people in the group, it all happens with the more people that you get. By myself, I'm not going to be able to do it because only a few people are watching it by myself, and the amount of people I got. But the more people you've got, if you put something out, then you can warn people. When major events are going to happen, and they can have a chance to get out of it, move out of the way or prepare themselves or whatever they have to do. And that's the whole idea of what that, and they're even talking about spiritual and physical ascension in the future, that we're getting to that point where we could be ascending at certain times when a disaster is going to hit a certain area and there's no means of escape, that God would send his perhaps aliens to come and take us to another place, so that a place of safety or something.
I hear a lot of people saying something like that there's a spiritual awakening coming, and they notice a raising of vibrations or frequencies or something like that. I mean, me personally, I'm not a religious person, so I just sort of listen to these things and sort of just look at what's coming. And I hear a lot of different ideas from different types of spirituality. So, but they all seem to be saying a similar thing, that we're kind of about to reach some kind of spiritual awakening for humanity. So it's quite an interesting thing. They're all saying the same thing.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that a lot of, and when it comes to spirituality and that. A lot of people can believe in God, but when it comes to things like ghosts and paranormals and spirits and prophecy and things like that, they kind of just say, "Oh, it's not. It can't be true," and that's what the majority of people think. And now they're more than ever in the last 10 years or so are starting to wake up to the idea that I just saw something on CNN today that said that they found this huge black hole, and it's incredible, and they're just trying to figure out what it is. The scientists.
What, in space or like on Earth?
Yeah.
Oh, right, I haven't seen that. Sounds interesting. So, was there any other predictions apart from the catastrophic? Is there anything else?
No, and I think we're kind of early in that stage right now because we're waiting. One of the predictions, there is one prediction that there's going to be, and I know this is going to sound kind of crazy because a lot of the stuff that I say does, but anyways, that God and the angels are going to send a dream to people that he wants to be part of this and it's going to attract certain people that will be kind of like visionaries of a new religion. That what we're trying to do here. So.
Okay. I was thinking something I've noticed when listening to your videos. I think sometimes, do you ever change what you interpret the voices to be saying? Do you ever listen to them like again in the future and think, "Oh, I got that wrong," or you hear something else in there? Because I think it might be interesting to get like other people to try and interpret it and see if they get hear the same things that you do.
I do a lot of changes, and it evolves over the years because my ability has improved. And with these recordings, I'm basically and I've been given the privilege to do the translations myself, because a lot of them are live connections and they will change, and they'll only tell me certain things that they want me to know as it goes along. So I might listen to a recording 1 year and get something wrong in it, and then I'll listen to it again and say, "Hey, that doesn't sound right," and it's much clearer this time. If you go back to some of the previous ones I did in the very beginning, there's a lot of changes. Now they're starting to get a lot clearer. Like, I don't know if you listened to this last one of Mailers. It was extremely clear in a lot of ways. Sure, there are going to be parts that I miss, that I misinterpret, but the general idea and what the angels are trying to say doesn't change. It's all, it's kind of like reading or trying to decipher the Dead Sea Scrolls with parchments missing. Sometimes you'll get interference and you won't be able to pick it up, because if it's a live connection, that's going to flow up and down. That connection's going to go in and out a little bit, and once I do put captions to it, and I know this sounds strange, they know that I got that part right, that'll remain the same. And if there's something that I did wrong, or I translated wrong, or they want me to add to that, they'll add it in kind of like real time.
All right. Okay. That's interesting. Yeah, I think it'd be a good experiment to get someone to listen to, say, to try and do their own transcription without hearing what you think it's saying first, and then to see if the two interpretations match up, or if one person hears something different to what you hear, and just it'd be an interesting way to confirm what you're hearing if someone else hears it.
Yeah, that's true. But on the other hand, they have to be connected to the right channel, or right frequency that I connect to. And if you can get, and it depends on the frequency that you actually tune into, and where you grab the recording, like the part that you grab the recording, if they put it in a different spot, it could be totally different. And so that's why when it comes to me looking at other people's work, unless I have previous, and I can sure, I'll take somebody's advice if they say to me, I think that they might have said this instead of that, and I'll look at it, and if I can hear that, sure. But I don't acknowledge anybody else doing any translations.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what their skill level is. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I'm probably the leading authority when it comes to understanding speech and the accents and the connection that I got. So
yeah, I suppose also because you've raised the birds and lived with them and everything, that'll give you a better connection to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I don't think I've got any other questions. Yeah, I think that was it. So everything I thought of. I didn't have long to look through it. Like there's a lot to get through with your videos. There's a lot of information, so there's probably something else.
There's some short. Like if you don't want to listen to the presentations, I know they with me talking all the time. There's this. Most of them have a shorter video of just the birds talking in each thread on the forum. So with me, what I try and do is I try and explain what they're talking about and take them through that, and then add my comments. And sometimes the videos can be 2 or 3 times as long. And then I do a second version of just them talking, and then you can kind of go over it. And you have, believe me or not, if you don't go over it with headphones and listen to it quite a few times, you're probably gonna not pick up that. You'll be able to pick up a lot. Should be able to pick up a lot but still you'd be able to pick up a lot more. And it might start out with 25%, and then if you listen to it 3 or 4 more times, you get a little bit more each time.
I think sometimes it's a bit fast when I've listened to the videos.
Yeah,
I think maybe sometimes I might click on the you can like slow down the videos on YouTube, watch them at like half speed. I think sometimes they're a bit clearer then.
Yeah. So you can I've never tried that. So if you can just click them on, and it slows them right down. You get to choose the speed you want to listen to them at. You get to choose the speed on YouTube you want to listen to them at.
Yeah, you can do. You can put it down to like a half speed, and sometimes I think the speech of the birds is quite quick, and I suppose you're better at interpreting them. But for me, it's hard to hear. Slowing them down makes it a bit clearer sometimes.
Yeah, I do. I did a lot of slowing down in the beginning, but I've never tried it on YouTube. But I found that at about 80%, if you go down to about 80%, it's probably about the best spot to hear when they're talking. Yeah, Victor could talk like at 200 words a minute.
Yeah. Okay. So have you got anything else you want to say? Any?
No, all I can say is that I appreciate your looking at this and your interest in this, and hopefully we can get some people that come over and have a look at some of the recordings and even join the forum if they think it's something that they might be interested in. I think it's just a start, and the synergy once it gets going with more people there's gonna be some miraculous things happening in the future.
Have you got like a load more recordings to come out?
I've got tons. Yeah, I'm probably only I'm trying for 70 lessons right now, or 70 presentations. I'm about 36, so I'm halfway there on the presentation. So I want to try and get them all done, which gives a good idea of how this whole process works and what the budgies are saying, and then we go from there and see what happens.
Okay. And are you planning to try with any other birds? I know you said you got another budgie that doesn't speak as much. Are you planning to try and get them to speak, or get another bird, or anything else like that? Or are you just happy with the recordings you've got already?
I think right now I'm happy because if I got another budgie that talked, and I think that's one of the reasons why Simon doesn't talk is that all the other recordings that I haven't really got into and presented are kind of just wasted, And if I just started recording Simon constantly, and there'd be no end to it. So and maybe after I finish these. And the other thing too is once you usually get a budgie, but not all budgies talk, and I think it's only like maybe 10% that will start communicating, and especially if they have a reason that they gotta really be bonded to a person. And Simon's not quite as bonded as what Mailer and Danny and Victor were.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I think I don't think I've got any other questions. I'll probably just wrap it up here because
okay.
Yeah. So just thanks for taking the time to have this chat with me. I think it's really interesting. I hope so.
Same here.
I hope you get some good feedback from people. I think you'll get a lot of different responses. So,
yeah, I know.
I hope you don't get any hate or anything, because while looking for your videos, I think they're like very wholesome. You know what I mean? very honest and wholesome. So
I try to be, and that's and I understand how people can be now, and
yeah.
I'm speaking from my heart, and I'm trying, and I think that I've been going through this for 20 years, and it's not something. It is pretty amazing. It's incredible. For one thing, you get the birds that are communicating in full-blown speech, and then you get the angelic connection, and it's totally mind-blowing. It really is, and a lot of people just won't accept that. I know. That one last thing I say, the previous videos, you're going to find that the new presentations in the forum is when this really started to evolve. Like even 5 years ago, I wasn't hearing, and the clarity of what they were saying isn't anywhere near of what it is now. So a lot of the videos have changed. So if you listen to the presentations, like in the new in the forum, you got the latest versions and the most up to date. So it's kind of like everything evolves. It's been an evolving thing over the years.
Okay, yeah, I've just seen the new one from the Mailer presentation.
How did you find that one?
Yeah, pretty interesting. I like that. Yeah.
Could you hear most of what he's saying, especially in the forward? I know it's kind of tough, but
I can hear most of what he's saying. But one thing I've noticed is if I close my eyes and listen, I can't really hear. I've got to have the subtitles. Once the subtitles are there, I can kind of hear it clearly. But
yeah, I know people say that, but if I do the same thing, well, after I do transcription, yeah, sure, I can hear it after. But when I have to go through, like I say, I have to go through these over and over and over again, because it's not easy to get that connection and capture it so other people can actually hear it as well. So that's what I try and do. And if people think it's pareidolia, they've got to listen to more, because there are so many things that they say that are, it can't be coincidence, or it can't be, it just sounds like that. It's really, they're really saying, like I said, over 90% of the stuff. So
yeah. Okay, well, I'll leave a link to that, and then people can go and listen and make their own minds up and see what they think. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Okay, I'll end it here then.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot, and take care.
All right. Thanks for talking to me. I'll put the video up in next week or so. All right.
Sounds good.
See you around.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. So as I was writing the subtitles for that, I was actually amazed that Ryan was able to give intelligible answers to whatever fevered gibberish I was asking him. But anyway, what he said about dreams was pretty interesting. About a week after this interview, I had this really vivid dream that seemed to relate to what he was saying. I dreamt I lived in an apartment with somebody. I don't know who it was, but they'd bought a new bird. I never got to see the bird because the cage they had it in was always covered over with a cloth. One day, this person had gone out and left me alone in the flat with the bird, and I was sitting there in the same room and just listened to it chirping away inside its cage underneath the cloth. But the more I was listening, the more I noticed that it wasn't just random chirping, it was actually speaking English. It was hard to make out the words at first, but the more I listened, the clearer the words became. I managed to work out that the bird was actually telling me about its previous owner. It had been a man who had died in the 60s, and the bird was telling me about how this guy had died. The fact that it had all happened in the 60s made me realise that the bird was actually really old, far older than a bird should be. So I grabbed a notepad and pen and started to write down what it was saying, but as I started to write down the words, I woke up. I did message Ryan to tell him about my dream to see what he thought, but so far he hasn't got back to me. I was also intrigued by what he said about the Budgie research group. It sounds like originally they did have quite a large group of people, but as the Budgies' messages took on increasingly religious overtones, that seems to have pushed a lot of people away. But then what happened to that hardcore group of believers? I did a bit more digging on Ryan's Angel Scrolls website and found these passages. Within weeks of establishing the new forum, the Budgies began to explain their purpose and who they were receiving their messages from. They said they were passing messages on from the angels in heaven, and that they wanted to teach the group about a religion straight from God. There were over 10 people involved in the research group, and they were mostly Christians. Ryan was a Christian as well. When the new group started, the Budgies prompted him to do an internet search during a translation on Adam Kadmon. After he did, he found that some biblical texts prophesied Adam Kadmon as a new religion, and some religions even believed Adam Kadmon was connected to the first Adam in the Bible. The Budgies told the group that because Ryan's grandfather's last name was Kadmon, he was directly connected to the Adam Kadmon bloodline, and they chose him to pass on their messages from God and the angels. They also named the forum the Procession, which they declared was a religion of God that was going to precede the second coming of Christ. Early on, Ryan had not evolved enough spiritually to fully comprehend what was happening, and there were misunderstandings in the group. Some of the confusion caused the translations to be corrupted, and he felt he needed more time to reevaluate. At this point, the angels instructed him to start a new forum and move the existing transcripts to it. Several weeks later, the old Procession forum was inadvertently deleted by the hosting provider, who required constant activity in it and closed it down when it became inactive for 14 days. The new forum was called The Eve of Revival in Religion. This forum was the beginning of Ryan's indoctrination into spirituality, and where he was ordained as a minister of God's new religion. So this idea of starting a new religion and the second coming of Christ being prophesied by talking budgerigars has got to be one of the most bizarre and unique stories I've ever heard. I actually wish I'd read about that before I interviewed Ryan so I could ask him more about it, but as I said earlier, there's so much deep lore involved in all this that I feel like I could dig for years through these websites and still be uncovering interesting side quests. I'm not sure what happened to the forum The Eve of Revival in Religion. The current website is called The Angel Scrolls, and there is a forum attached to that, but it seems to mostly just be Ryan and his wife posted there. There doesn't seem to be a group of people attached to it anymore, so it seems that even that hardcore group of believers who were hanging around at the beginning have moved on to another flock. Even so, Ryan continues to transcribe the scriptures as spoken to him by the birds. It shows a real dedication to what he believes in. Now, of course, there's plenty of skeptical reactions to these talking birds. Some claim the birds are just making random noises and Ryan is interpreting them as intelligent speech. It's a similar effect to when people hear voices in white noise or see faces in random patterns. Even if this was the case, it doesn't necessarily mean the whole thing is false. Although, as I said in the interview, I'm not actually a religious person myself. I know a little bit about religious teaching. There's a lot in Christian teaching about how God is not some external being, but actually resides within all of us. From an evolutionary perspective, you could see it as us evolving some innate sense of good and evil within us through thousands of years of coexistence as a social species. And people use many devices to tap into their subconscious, whether it's automatic writing or scrying or even listening to the voices of talking birds. If the divine really does reside in all of us, then who's to say these messages can't be considered to have come from a divine source? Now, I'm not trying to push any particular belief on you here. I'm just trying to give some different perspectives. When it comes to belief and skepticism, I think people can be very black and white on a lot of issues. I'm more interested in exploring the grey areas, presenting different possibilities and then leaving people to make up their own minds. But still, I do think it would be kind of cool to see a full-on religion forming around the speech of budgerigars, and I don't see why that would be any more or less valid than any other particular belief system. So whatever you believe, I do think the story of Ryan and his budgies is a fascinating one. I'll put a link to his channel and his website in the description, so go and check him out and have a look through his work. Please don't send any hate his way, even if you're a complete unbeliever. He seems like a really nice and genuine guy, and he's completely dedicated to what he believes. I hope you liked this video. It's a bit of a departure from the normal creepy content, but I thought this was too interesting a subject to pass up. So if you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up and maybe think about subscribing as well if you're not already. Thank you for watching. Until next time, goodbye.